Writing a book, yet getting stuck. Have lots of started situations that you dropped when things got muddled? Or do you have lots of stories that didn't go anywhere? Do you want a better starting method? Or do you need to discover where that great idea went wrong? Maybe this episode of The Right Focus can help. Welcome to The Right Focus. We cover productivity, process, craft, and tools. Our podcast episodes last as long as it takes to fix a quick dinner, drive a short commute, or take a brisk walk. All through the summer months, we focus on the craft of writing novels and novellas and epics, from beginning ideas to prepping for publication, week by week by week. Let's take a brief look at the stages needed to discover your novel. We begin with the foundations, the building blocks for your story. Have many of these blocks in place before you begin writing, but don't have all the blocks in place. Changes happen as we write. We may need to alter our plan. As we work through the foundation stage, we may drop out and start writing. That's fine. Actually, that's great. Just remember to come back and deal with these building blocks before you let a stumbling block or a work slowdown happen because you need to work something else out. And you will have time to come back. Something will interfere with your writing brain. You think you can't write, but you can work on the foundation stage. The foundation stage has 4 parts. We pick the novel we want to write, as well as the story, the protagonist, the antagonist, and the tagline or theme. That's the universal connection that brings people to the story as an individual focus. It's your idea and your niche for that idea that makes your book different from other books. Then we explore our idea through a rough sketch. Next, we clarify the story we're going to write with several pivotal scenes. At this point, we will tackle what gives every new writer pause, the manuscript format and basics. Having these done early will prevent that niggling worry that will eventually tell the muse, stop, I don't wanna. By already having these done, we can easily tell that worry, been there, done that, shut up. After the foundation stage, we envision our entire story. Then we go into analysis and finally harvesting. Our focus for this episode, however, is pick idea, story, protagonist, antagonist, theme. Are you ready? Let's start. First, pick your idea. What idea is intriguing you? Letting words flow onto the page without direction is seductive. How many times have you written scene after scene only to fail at constructing those scenes into a coherent whole? The story awakens. An unbroken egg. Let's use a plan to crack it. Most writers keep a notebook filled with ideas. Browse through your previous ideas and select whatever sparks more ideas. Don't pick what everyone else is doing. Pick what you want to write. If you don't have an assortment of ideas, then jot down the idea that keeps lurking in the corners, popping into your head when you least expect it. Who is the focus? How do you see that person? How do you view them? Seeing is surface. Viewing is deeper, into the essence of the person. What is their goal? What is their dilemma? A dilemma is a choice between 2 bad alternatives. You need to consider those alternatives. Know the reason that each alternative is a bad choice for your focus character. What catastrophe might occur? Rapidly write your answer to that idea of focus, seeing, viewing, and the goal of the character. Let the words flow rapidly without corrections. Don't try for complete grammatically correct sentences. Just let the words flow. Don't scratch out or erase or delete what you have written. Whatever you don't want to use, just run a double line through it and flow on. About 75 to 100 words for each question should spark more ideas. Puzzle over the dilemma question. While the dilemma may not become the story's central conflict, it should create insight into what matters most to the focus character. I would handwrite these answers, but you can type them if handwriting gives you a cold chill. The computer creates a barrier between me and the story. I will back up to add in or delete or make corrections instead of letting the words flow. The editor side of my brain won't turn off. While I am an extremely fast typist, I am much faster with handwriting, especially with gel ink on smooth paper. The creative side of my brain engages when I handwrite. From your responses to the 5 questions above, create a jot list of ideas, just a few things to mull over or explore or research. Writing these down will focus your subconscious. We've all heard that the subconscious works while we sleep. Studies show that presenting our minds with a question before we sleep will usually lead to an answer upon awakening. Last thing, if you do not have an ideas notebook, make one. You can use a plain wire notebook, a 3-ring binder, a pretty journal, or a field notebook, whatever you find workable. Record stray ideas, intriguing quotations, and the like. My current ideas notebook is a little large because I've reduced what I carry daily. I now carry a much smaller notebook and transfer any ideas into the larger notebook before I start my writing for the day. Transferring the ideas actually engages my brain for writing. And the smaller notebook works until I burn through half the pages because inspiration strikes my current story. Estimate a word count for each day that you're writing and record it. If you're computer-based, you should have your word count with no problem. After picking your idea, you need to pick your story. Before you develop a story, you need to understand genre. Genre simply means category, just as there are many different classifications for art media: ink, acrylic, oil, watercolor, crayon. Writing has classifications upon classifications. First, we distinguish between prose and poetry. In the world of prose, we then separate fiction from nonfiction. Go into any bookstore or online distributor and you will see broad categories for the books. In most stores, the fiction and nonfiction sections are on different sides. Both broad categories then break into smaller genres. Fiction divides into classics, literary, mystery, speculative, which means science fiction and fantasy, romance, western, youth, which for some reason is called young adult, even though it drops down into age 12, and children's. I know I've skipped several categories. Children is further divided by age or reading level. Classics is usually shelved by time period. To take one broad genre, mystery can be subdivided into amateur sleuth, cozy, crime, historical, noir or hard-boiled, detective or police procedural, suspense, and thriller. Even so, all the books are shelved in the same section. When you approach genre as a reader, you often don't think of the areas within the broad field. You just read what you like. You ask for another dragon book, or an FBI agent chasing a twisted serial killer, or a beach read that will make me cry. Writers need more clarity than readers. We need to know the rules of our genre and subgenre, usually so we can maintain most rules but break a few. You may read articles that say genre writing is dead. They said that about mysteries. The word was given out after Arthur Conan Doyle wrote his last Sherlock Holmes. Then along came Dorothy Sayers and Agatha Christie, reinventing in 2 different directions what Conan Doyle had done. Write what you want to, not what someone else tells you to write. First, determine your broad category of genre, then discover your subgenre. You may have to do research for this. Thank goodness the internet is handy and for once we'll have the answers. Search types of mystery stories, or genres in science fiction, or categories of fantasy novels. If you already know that you like steampunk instead of urban fantasy, great! You're ready for the next step. Discover the subgenre's parameters. What does steampunk or your particular genre include? What does it exclude? What are the basic rules that define the genre? Which basic rules do you wish to maintain? Which rules might you decide to break? Think of rules like tropes. Any research can be a time sucker, so don't get sidetracked. Spend your time wisely and print out what you find. Third, pick your protagonist. A protagonist is the primary character facing the central conflict of the story. The protagonist will be in the story from beginning to end. In William Shakespeare's Tragedy of Julius Caesar, Caesar dies in Act 3. The play continues for 2 more acts. Caesar is not the protagonist. We could argue that Mark Antony, in addition to Brutus, is a protagonist in the play. We can also argue about the protagonist in F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Gatsby doesn't immediately enter the story, and he dies before we reach the end. Nick Carraway is often called merely a narrator, yet he is the one conflicted most about appearance versus reality, which is Fitzgerald's central conflict. As you work through the following questions, you can choose to handwrite your answers or type them onto your computer, whether that be a laptop, tablet, smartphone, or other electronic note-taking software. Name. And anything special about that name, such as its meaning, or that it's a combination of grandmothers, or he's named for his father's favorite baseball player. Necessities of appearance. Consider the obvious as well as the not obvious. Speech habits, dialects, special fluencies, stance, walk, tics or nervous habits, manner of dress, and tokens such as good luck charms. Purpose versus desire. Most people have jobs, but a few have careers. Everyone has dreams, but only a few crave a particular dream. Jobs often give us purpose, but some people are driven by a greater purpose. Firefighters and law enforcement officers are usually filled with the purpose of defending those around them. What drives your protagonist forward? What does your protagonist desire? A desire is a dream yearned after or craved. For angsty stories, the purpose often prevents attainment of the desire. Strength versus weakness. Physical strength and weakness, mental strength and weakness, moral strength and weakness. Knowing these three sets gives you a deeper insight into character. If you become stumped, consider the 7 vices, those deadly sins, and the 7 virtues, heavenly virtues. After Raiders of the Lost Ark hit the movie theaters, everyone started giving easy fears and weaknesses to protagonists. Fear of snakes or heights was easy to write into a script or story, being more intriguing than the obvious. Have a secret angst for your protagonist. What is a past event that still haunts them? What will he or she not wish to be revealed to anyone? To what lengths will that person go to keep the secret hidden? And there's 3 H's as well as a secret angst. We all want people that we can admire, especially in our central characters. Most readers identify in some way with the primary characters in a story and become frustrated when that character does something that the reader deplores. We also don't want characters without backbone. We might think the characters should take the easy route, but we're never happy with the story when they do so. In the books that we love, the primary character wrestles with personal dilemmas and decides to be extraordinary rather than only remaining extraordinary. How will your protagonist be honorable? 2 examples that reveal honor are standing against others and choosing the ethical over the expedient. How will your protagonist be heroic? Enduring suffering without calling on others and risking personal safety for others are heroic acts. How will your protagonist be humble? While a character can be assured and strong, he or she should not be arrogant and snobbish. And finally, what horrific event would repulse your protagonist? In writing these answers, you may have had scenes pop into your head. Quickly sketch out those scenes. Don't lose them. Your novel is beginning to build itself. 4th, pick your antagonist. Great antagonists often mirror elements of the protagonist. Sherlock against Moriarty, Frodo and Gollum, Hamlet and Claudius, and Edgar and Edward in Shakespeare's King Lear. Mirrors can be similar or complete opposites. Indiana Jones's rival in Raiders of the Lost Ark is a German archaeologist who had decided to serve the goals of Hitler's Nazism rather than find ancient artifacts to assist the modern world, especially the university at which Indy taught. Darth Vader faced the same choices that his son Luke Skywalker faced. Fanny and Mary Crawford in Mansfield Park are complete opposites in appearance, outlook, and morals, yet they have the same interest, future dreams, and desires, which they pursue in completely different ways. Antagonists should not be straw men, easily knocked down. Even if the viewpoint of the antagonist is never given in the story, the writer needs to understand that character's inner life. New writers want to make their antagonist all-powerful. How can a protagonist ever defeat an omnipotent opponent? The writer resorts to a coincidence or a lucky chance. That weakens the protagonist. If you're writing a series like J.K. Rowling, in which your protagonist will mature and strengthen, then yes, you can use coincidence and luck in the early books of the series. However, more is needed for the ultimate defeat. Study the various parts of the final battle against Voldemort, Nagini, Beatrix Lestrange, and the other evil minions to discover how neither coincidence nor luck developed the climax. We're looking at many of the same elements that we did for the protagonist: the name and the reason that character has that name, necessities of appearance, purpose and desire, strength versus weakness, secret past, and the 3 H's. Some of the best antagonists also make you root for them, and we cry for their defeat. Heathcliff in the Wuthering Heights films, but never the book. The antagonists that make us cringe are the ones who have no barriers to what they will do in order to achieve their desire. Moriarty in the new Sherlock series, or the Joker in the Batman series. Honorable or dishonorable? Figure that out. Heroic? The opposite is cowardly. How does the antagonist manipulate others rather than personally committing evil? When an antagonist does something heroic, the purpose is often for a long-term plan that is destructive. An antagonist's humility will be false. Most often, the antagonist's self-centered will creates arrogance or a false modesty so cleverly masked that many cannot see the truth. And what past action clearly exhibits the antagonist's choice to be horrific? Finally, pick your theme. Theme means truth. Some writers call the theme a tagline, a quick sentence or two that encapsulates the entire story. Themes are universal statements, true for all people in all times, that will guide your character development and your story's development. Often, a great story has multiple truths to explore. These same truths can be in many different stories. Deception has unexpected consequences are themes in Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, and Much Ado About Nothing, all plays by Shakespeare. Romeo and Juliet also has violence injures the innocents. Simple pleasures are the greatest delight is sometimes a very common theme. And in The Scarlet Ibis by James Hurst, he writes the theme. There is within us, and with sadness I have watched it in others, a knot of cruelty, born by the stream of love. Classic subjects are good versus evil, or appearance versus reality. Themes drive the subject in a particular direction. Turn the subject into a sentence, and you have a theme, whether you choose to state it or merely imply it in your novel. A subject might be lies versus the truth. Your theme might be deception is a deeply tangled knot that is difficult to unravel. Notice how the theme creates motifs for a story. In deception is a deeply tangled knot, we have knot, tangles, and difficult to unravel. We can use these symbols for tangled relationships and knotty events, secrets and lies to be unraveled. In my book, Christmas with Death, the theme is Christmas is for miracles, merriment, and murder. In The Key with Hearts, the theme is a convenient marriage inconveniently causes murder. The theme as tagline should hint at the story. Writing a tagline seems easy. It is not. Deliberate over your choice of tagline. Virtually every element of your story should depend on this single sentence. Your wording can change and refine as characters and events develop. However, the basic theme should not. You may spend 30 solid minutes constructing 10 simple words. It's time well spent. You will refer back to this tagline in every scene you write. All of that above is about a week's worth of work. Come back throughout the next few days and look closely at each one. Your story, your genre, your protagonist and antagonist. You really need to spend a lot of time there. And your theme. A whole day on that alone. The theme will be the hardest. If you're unclear on any of these, the story may twist and writhe rather than flow smoothly as you have fun. And writing should always be your favorite thing, not a drudgery. Inspiration for this episode comes from Norman Mailer. The problem is when you're not writing, you don't know if you're lying fallow or if you'll never write again. That certainly fits my thinking when I'm between projects. After I finished the novella that I published in March, it was time to start the final book in my Into Death series with Isabella Newcomb, set in the spring of 1920. I knew my protagonist, the setting, the situation, the opening scenes, but I found it difficult to set pen to paper. I had ideas, I just couldn't launch. I filled my thinking time with, this podcast. I did thinking time and more thinking time. Then I had 3 solid days of work, mapping clues and more clues and more clues. And finally, after all of that, the words flowed again. Those thinking days had me worried, though. I'm trying to stay up with the river flood of ideas now. Thanks for listening to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by M.A. Lee with the assistance of Remy Black and Edie Rooms from Writers Inc. Books. All through the summer months, our focus is the craft of writing. We are discovering your novel, from beginning idea to prepping for publication. We'll work through the process stages of foundations to story, envisioning the story, analyzing story before, during, and after the draft, harvesting the story through revisions and enhancements, and prepping the story for publication. Many of these preps and guides are useful setups for the National Novel Writing Month in November. That's writing only, no idea work. We can also use this information to solve issues with stories that we've abandoned. All those stories are crying in the wilderness. Time to rescue them with the right focus. Show notes for this and other episodes can be found at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at winkbooks@aol.com. Remember, whatever occurs, write on.